Don't whisper into the camera. That's not how I operate, right?
What's up, YouTube? You know the drill. The fat guy and I are covering the Redskins, Jay Gruden and the coaching staff, who the Skins have added, who they've lost. Then we go over the depth chart, projected starters. We give you the Skins team grade going into 2018 and let you know if you should bet the over or under on the Skins. Only 6.5 wins. That's surprisingly low to me. Last year, fat guy, the Redskins won 7 games. What did you think of their season?
This is video 32 of this anthology. Does anyone really care? Honestly.
Probably not, considering how little views we get. Hopefully this one's a little better, thanks to that joke. All right, Jay Gruden, what do you think about him?
Talk about the season.
No, you don't. What do you think about Jay Gruden? They were shitty last year. They won 7 games.
They were mediocre last year, but they've upgraded in a few spots. And hopefully Jay Gruden keeps his job and doesn't have to ship off to Oakland to work with his brother.
I don't know if you guys noticed, but the fat guy has voice modulation and only can talk in one tone.
Better than a small penis and a gay haircut.
So for Jay Gruden, 2011 to 2013, he was the offensive coordinator for the Bengals. From 2014 to 2018, he's been the head coach of the Redskins. He's gone 28, 35, and 1 for a 44% winning percentage. Fat guy, how do you feel about Jay Gruden's run so far as the head coach in Washington?
Oddly enough, I don't mind him, but I play a lot of favorites, as you've seen. I feel like they haven't had the strongest rosters necessarily, but they did make the playoffs. They did win a division with Kirk Cousins, and he definitely likes that. I think Jay Gruden is a decent coach. I mean, I don't know if it's going to work out necessarily in this span. He's kind of on a prove-it year, especially when they make the trade for Alex Smith. But I have some optimism for Jay Gruden. And, you know, like I said, if it doesn't work out, he can always work with his brother in Oakland.
And Matt Kavanaugh, he's a very experienced offensive coach in the NFL since 1994. He's been the quarterback coach and offensive coordinator for a plethora of teams. That includes the Arizona Cardinals, San Francisco 49ers, the Bears, the Ravens, the Jets, the Bears again, and now he's in Washington. His coaching history is highlighted by a Super Bowl win as the offensive coordinator of the 2000 Baltimore Ravens. And for the Redskins, he's been the quarterback coach in 2015, 2016, worked with Kirk Cousins. Currently, it will be his second season as the offensive coordinator for the Redskins. Is his job easier now with the addition of Alex Smith?
That's an excellent question. But first, I have to segue back to your grammar. It's Kavanaugh, and the word is plethora. But yeah, I think if anyone has Alex Smith, your job definitely gets a little bit easier. Usually you pair a player like Alex Smith with a good defense. I'm not saying Washington Redskins have a good defense, but they're going to be able to control the tempo definitely with Alex Smith at the helm. Now let's not forget, everybody, before we rip on Alex Smith, over a large sample, he's the 3rd most winningest quarterback in the active league. That's pretty good when you're in the same company as Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. You did mention that Matt Kavanaugh was the offensive coordinator for the 2000 Baltimore Ravens. Now, the Ravens didn't exactly win the Super Bowl because they had a good offense. You know, I think they threw like 140 yards in the Super Bowl. Yeah, and Trent Dilfer was the quarterback. So it's not exactly a glowing review, but that was 18 years ago, and I'm sure he's improved since then.
And at defensive coordinator, they have Greg Minuski. He's a real man's man. He looks like a guy who would beat up both of his son's boyfriends. Another experienced coach. Since 2001, he's been the linebackers coach or defensive coordinator for the Redskins, Chargers, 49ers, and Colts. 2016, he was the outside linebacker coach for the Redskins and was promoted to defensive coordinator in 2017. Now entering his second season as the Redskins defensive coordinator. Fat guy, what are your expectations for Greg Minuski and the Redskins defense?
I always feel like the Redskins defense has been underrated, but I think with the addition of Alex Smith, I'm going to keep harping on it. When you control the clock, you're going to keep the defense fresh, and that only means good things for Greg Minuski and his defense. Because I felt like this Redskins defense does have some talent on it in a variety of places. So if they are able to stay fresh like any defense in the NFL, they're going to be pretty decent.
Let's move on to notable player additions. At quarterback, the main addition, maybe the best addition that any team's made, is quarterback Alex Smith.
Yeah, definitely. Alex Smith, like I said, nothing but glowing reviews. If you look at it, he's churned out win after win after win. He seems to have a positive record every year. Now, he did replace Kirk Cousins, so The upgrade isn't like astounding. It's not like he went from Blaine Gabbert to Alex Smith, but it is an upgrade nonetheless from Kirk Cousins to Alex Smith. Pretty good how the Redskins have been able to keep some strength at quarterback, despite having to change bodies a lot. The Browns could probably take a little bit of a lesson here. It is possible not to draft the franchise quarterback, yet still be able to field one.
And at running back, they drafted Darius Geis, but he's gone down with a torn ACL. He's going to miss this year.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate. That was a pretty good run, actually. I remember when we watched him in his college tape, Big Ryan and I actually didn't like him that much. We did think he had exceptional pass blocking ability, at least in the highlights that we saw, but how much can you glean from highlights? He's lost for the year, so that's going to open up snaps for other players in the backfield.
They also had wide receiver Paul Richardson from the Seahawks.
Paul Richardson, he had some big plays last year. It felt like he turned the corner in Seattle. And like anything in Seattle, as soon as you get good, they get rid of you. So that's happened with Paul Richardson, and he signed a reasonable contract with the Washington Redskins.
Another addition they made is left tackle Jerron Christian, a third-round pick of this year.
I'm not sure a swing tackle is exactly what they needed, but it's always good to have depth, especially on the offensive line. I mean, look at Minnesota currently. There's a lot of injured guys. I like the Washington Redskins offensive line. There's Ty Nsekhe, who's a decent swing tackle, and now he's going to have some competition. You need a lot of bodies on the offensive line. Those fat guys, they go down when you get rolled up on. Believe me, I would know.
And at nose tackle, their first-round pick is Daron Payne.
Daron Payne, defensive lineman, Alabama. Doesn't that just sound perfect? Sound like gold? Defensive lineman, Alabama. If you play in the Alabama defense, I'll harp on it again, chances are you're really good because you were one of the best recruits in the country out of high school. I mean, then you're going to be developed in a very good system. I mean, it's not always going to work out, but the probabilities are high. And the Washington Redskins are going to have a high probability guy in Daron Payne.
And at outside linebacker, they add Pernell McPhee.
I thought that was interesting that the Bears let him go. Maybe telling of his body. Maybe he's not doing so well physically. But he has had a pretty decent career between Baltimore and Chicago. I mean, he was the best player on Chicago's defense for a couple of years. Maybe they can glean a little bit more magic out of Pernell McPhee this year in a rotational position.
And at cornerback, they make two additions, one in the veteran Orlando Scandrick, and two, the new rookie Adonis Alexander, who was actually picked in the supplemental draft using a 6th-round pick for next year.
Now, Orlando Scandrick, he was on the Cowboys. He was the highest paid base salary for the Cowboys for a long time. Orlando Scandrick's a decent player, but I always hate getting older in the secondary because it's so hard when you lose a step to beat some of the guys. And the offense seems to dictate who they put on you, and they can usually get a burner on you when you're a little bit, let's say, not as fleet of foot. And now I'm not sure if Scandrick's lost a step, but I mean, let's take a look at the man. He's a bit older, so chances are he has. So Scandrick, I'm not sure how much of an impact he's going to be, but he can be a good corner. There are spots where it'll be beneficial to have him on the field. Now, Adonis Alexander, that's one of those heralded guys that came in through the supplemental draft. They thought he could go as early as 2nd, but he went in the 6th round of the supplemental draft. It went on measurables mostly. However, though, at his pro day, they were less exciting. And also, pro day numbers you have to take with a grain of salt because they never seem to be as good as combine numbers. And I don't think that's a coincidence whatsoever. I mean, if you are trained and timed at your alma mater, chances are things are going to be, let's say, a little bit more optimistic. Now, I'm not saying he's a bad player necessarily. I think it's worth a risk at the 6th round pick, but I'm not sure he's going to be a key contributor necessarily for the Redskins this year.
And at safety, they add the 4th-round pick rookie, Troy Apke.
There was an article that came out about Troy Apke, about how he was one of the fastest safeties. Now, he's a white guy, so I find that very hard to believe. But you can always use a little bit more help. And like I said, I'm not sure if he's going to play meaningful snaps, but he could end up starting on this Washington Redskins team. So we're going to have to see around the preseason a little bit more before we can make judgment on them. But it is nice to add some fresh young bodies, especially in the secondary. Secondary you can usually play right away. I mean, you're going to get burned with some mental mistakes, but at least you have the physical ability to keep up.
Now let's move on to players that they've lost, and we're starting at the quarterback position with quarterback Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, this is a lukewarm. I like Captain Kirk, but I think Alex Smith is better overall, so I'm going to have to call this advantage Washington on making this switch.
And at wide receiver, they lose Terrell Pryor.
Terrell Pryor, one of my favorite athletes in the NFL. How could you make a transition from quarterback to wide receiver? The only other guy that's kind of ever done that is Joe Webb. Terrell Pryor is on the Jets. with his unique speed and size combination. I'm not sure how much of a contribution he's going to make to the Jets wide receiving group, but he does have the physical abilities to play a lot of positions in this league. Terrell Pryor is a supreme athlete, and I wish him well in New York.
And at guard, they lose Orlando Franklin.
Orlando Franklin, who looks like Forrest Whitaker with a bunch of allergic bee stings on his head. I don't think it'll be a big deal. The last time Orlando Franklin was relevant was when he played guard for the Denver Broncos. That was some time ago, and that was the good Denver Broncos when they actually had an offense.
And at cornerback, one of the bigger losses for them is Kendall Fuller, who they did trade to get Alex Smith.
Yeah, Kendall Fuller, they say, has turned the corner, is like the best slot corner in the league. I mean, that's probably a little bit grandiose, but he was really, really good last year. Now, you have to give up something when you're going to trade for Alex Smith. So they gave up a pick, and they gave up Kendall Fuller. That was a good little addition that the Chiefs were able to acquire. However, though, I still think they're better off with Alex Smith than a slot corner. And obviously, they've tried to address it. I mean, they added Kendrick and Adonis Alexander. So, you lose a little bit there, but you gain in the quarterback position. And gaining in the quarterback position is better than gaining in the cornerback position.
And at safety, they lose Suak Cravens.
Good. He's a guy that said he had to wear glasses permanently for the rest of his life because of a concussion. Then he went AWOL. This is a good loss. You don't want nut jobs like him on your team. So I think this is good for the Redskins as a whole. He is a good athlete, but I'm not sure how well he's going to fit in. He went to Denver, I believe, and good riddance. That's their problem now.
Another guy they lost was safety D'Angelo Hall.
All good things come to an end. Now, D'Angelo Hall had I'd say a storied Rocky career. He did have that game where he had 3 or 4 interceptions. I think 4 against Jay Cutler. I do remember that game. But then he also had that stint where he played 8 games for the Raiders. And then they got rid of him after paying him that huge amount of money. D'Angelo Hall was a bit of a mouthpiece earlier in his career, but in his veteran years for the Redskins, pretty decent. One of those guys that, he was more humble as he got older, which is kind of nice. That's why he ended up playing a little bit longer. So, good for D'Angelo Hall. You're not going to make the Hall of Fame or anything, but he had a good, solid NFL career overall.
One more player that we forgot to mention was cornerback Bashaud Breeland.
Oh, right, Bashaud Breeland. But the jury's not out necessarily. He's still shopping offers from everywhere. So we're going to have to figure out where he lines up. But whoever comes up with the most money, I have a feeling that's where he's going to play.
All right, let's go over this roster top to bottom. We're going to start at quarterback, where it's Alex Smith's team. I'll also mention they have Colt McCoy as a backup, as well as Cleveland's ex-quarterback, Kevin Hogan.
Alex Smith, like I said, I've harped on him enough. He's a fantastic quarterback. If you actually look, he has the best deep ball passer rating from last year. So everyone thinks he can't throw the deep ball. They're wrong. He can. He's great at short ball. He can run. He can scamper. He's kind of got every tool. Now, he's not going to blow you away. That's the thing about him. He's not a highlight reel player, which kind of hurts his value in the eyes of other people. But at the end of the day, all that matters is the W. And Alex Smith can deliver on that. Now, Colt McCoy, Roto-World said that he was one of the worst backups in the league. I harshly disagree. I think Colt McCoy is one of the better backups in the league, actually. Also a former Cleveland player, like the third string Kevin Hogan. Colt McCoy, he's like Alex Smith light, I would say. He had some okay years in Cleveland, which is pretty good considering how many quarterbacks have run through there. He's been in the system for a while in Washington, and I think he's a decent backup quarterback. You also mentioned Kevin Hogan, who had some okay games in Cleveland, but as your third choice, it's not so bad.
I want to talk about the Alex Smith effect and why he wins so many games, and to me it's ball possession. That offense stays on the field, the defense has to play less, thus making the defense that much better and that much harder to play against. Could that mean better things for this Washington defense for this year?
It has to. We're harping on it because it's such a big deal. You should see a big change. If you want proof of the Alex Smith effect, take a look at the 2013 Kansas City Chiefs. Now, they went from the bottom in the basement with Matt Castle. They had a really good defense on paper that played almost 5 minutes more than any other defense. Now, you add Alex Smith into the mix. Might I add that they were also the 32 ranked fantasy defense and then jumped to the number 2 fantasy defense? I would know because I drafted the Kansas City Chiefs that year. Now, you added Alex Smith and they went from the basement to the high rise. They went 11-4 the next year with Alex Smith because their excellent defense now had time to breathe. They now were winning the possession battle. Imagine if you got to play 10 or 12 minutes less per game. Chances are you're going to be way more fresh. Now, I don't care how good a defense is. If you're tired, you will get beat. But if you're fresh all game, you will beat the tired offense. And that's what happened with the Chiefs. I mean, they ratted off 9 wins in a row. They were 9-0 to start that year. It's a monumentous change. Is it going to be that historic for the Washington Redskins? I don't think so, but you are going to notice a little bit better of defensive efforts, and you're going to notice that they're going to have probably the whole of the possession. I'd be willing to bet that they'll have around 32 minutes, 33 minutes per game.
Which is a lot.
It actually is a really big deal. 33 minutes means you're playing 6 minutes less on defense. That's a really big deal. So I'm going to say this is going to be pretty big. As long as Alex Smith can retain his form, retain his health, he's a low turnover guy. So I think that's what's going to happen this year.
I just want to accentuate the fact of the Chiefs between 2012 and 2013. Before they added Alex Smith, the rookie of the year on that team was Dontari Poe. Their Pro Bowlers on defense were Tamba Hali, Justin Houston, Derek Johnson, and Eric Berry, and they went 2-14. A defense that good went 2-14. That's how much of a difference Alex Smith can make. They went from 2 wins to 11 wins. They have all those Pro Bowlers, guys that are going to be going into the Hall of Fame, and Alex Smith definitely helped them out by keeping them on the field less, thus them being more effective. So this is a lot of talk about Alex Smith, but he does make a difference. He does get wins. That's why I'm so surprised that this over-under is 6.5. Can you imagine Alex Smith winning less than 6 games?
It hasn't happened since, Singletary days? Some of the most dysfunctional 49er teams. And that's another sample, another thing. When they made a coaching change and they pretty much played Alex Smith ball where they had a strong defense, they went to the NFC Championship. Remember that game against the Saints where Vernon Davis got that touchdown? Just a fantastic performance. And then he got shipped off in favor of Colin Kaepernick. Yeah, that was a good idea by San Francisco.
Well, it looks like it worked out, but it took till 2018 now that they got Jimmy Garoppolo. All right, enough of all these other teams. Let's continue with the Redskins. Alex Smith is going to be great. At running back, though, they have a problem. Darius Geis got injured. He was going to be the early down back. Chris Thompson is still really, really good, but he might not be healthy until November. It's hard to believe that Thompson will be playing at his best when the season comes around. That means that guys like Rob Kelly, Fat Rob, and Samaj Pirine are going to have to carry the load to start the year. Do you think this is going to be a problem, or do you think these guys can handle that?
It's hard to say, but Rob Kelly has had success in this league, and I really like Samaj Pirine in college, but he just looked very plodding and unexplosive last year, which is really disappointing because he was one of a fantasy hype-up guys. I thought he'd be such a goal line threat, but he wasn't. However, though, he looks like he's going to get that opportunity because he was the odd man out, seemingly, when you added Geis. However, though, between him and Rob, I think Rob Kelly's going to get the nod. I mean, he did start the preseason game against the Patriots just yesterday. And then also Byron Marshall will be, I guess, the pass catcher if Chris Thompson is to miss any time. So I'm not sure this is a good thing necessarily. It is a little bit of a weakness, but weakness at running back you can overcome. And I think with their offensive line and Smith, they're going to be able to have a productive offense regardless of who's playing in the backfield.
And for this running game, an underrated part that looks to be good after this first preseason game that we were able to watch is Elijah Wellman, the fullback, college free agent. Actually looked pretty good. He made one really nice block on the play that Darius Geis got hurt. He also had a nice catch.
Nice catch, and yards after, he smashed for the first down.
But it could be a perfect guy to fit with Alex Smith in this offense.
However, though, it's still early and he's still a fullback, so there's no guarantee he'll even make the roster.
Let's move over to wide receiver, where they're highlighted by Josh Doctson and Jamison Crowder. They also added in Paul Richardson. They have the veteran Brian Quick, and there's not too much else after that. Those are really the 4 guys that are going to be playing.
Now, Josh Doctson is a former Scott McLowan. I don't even know how to say that guy's name. You know that drunk guy that used to be a scout in Seattle and then with the Redskins? Yeah, him. So Josh Doctson was one of his darlings. But you could see the upside that he saw. Josh Doctson is one of the best jump ballers in the game. He really is. Most notably for some of his highlight reel touchdowns last year. However, though, the rest of his pass game leaves something to be desired. Now, where that's desired is Jamison Crowder. He kind of picks up the slack there. He's more of a possession guy. I think Jamison Crowder is going to have a really productive year. paired with Alex Smith. The problem is you need touchdowns, and I'm not sure Crowder is going to be able to grab those touchdowns. But Josh Doxson is such a red zone threat. Pairing them together is a very complementary situation. So I like the combo as a whole. Now, you also mentioned Paul Richardson. He's got big playability, and I think he'll fit in nicely as well. I mean, this isn't the greatest wide receiver group in the league. It's maybe not even good, but I think they're a little bit underrated. It's definitely not bad in my eyes.
Another thing about Paul Richardson coming from Seattle is that Alex Smith and Russell Wilson both have similar styles where they like to scramble to throw. And Paul Richardson could get open. He's had the experience to do it, and he's had success in the past. It will be nice to see how those three guys line up and are able to play with Alex Smith. But I agree with you. Jamison Crowder is the guy to have fantasy-wise. Josh Doxson will be the guy to have touchdown-wise. Let's move over to tight ends, where Jordan Reed and Vernon Davis are a nice 1-2 punch if healthy, if they take it seriously.
Well, you just said if healthy. Now, Vernon Davis, it's hard to get effort out of him, but he's in his last legs in the NFL. So the Redskins did get some last year. They should be able to this year. That's not going to result in fantasy production. I wouldn't be drafting him in fantasy. And Jordan Reed, as usual, is a big red flag. But if he slips in your draft, he's definitely worth a look here. But Jordan Reed, as usual, always gets hurt. But injuries are so hard to predict. Maybe he's just unlucky. But if he does slip in your draft, tight ends are at a premium. I would pick him up.
Offensive line from left to right, Pro Bowler, All-Pro, Trent Williams at left tackle. At left guard, it's going to be Sean Laval. At center, Chase Roullet. At right guard, the young phenom and Brandon Sheriff. And at right tackle, the big man, Morgan Moses.
Now, before I go over the offensive line, I want to give a shout out to Joe A., who's commented on so many of our videos, and he's been waiting patiently for the number 32 team, the one he's been interested in, the Washington Redskins. So, Joe A., this one's for you. Now, Trent Williams, he's one of the premier tackles in the NFL, one of the best players in the NFL. I really like him. It's excellent to have that type of protection, and Alex Smith is going to benefit from this for sure. I mean, he hasn't had a tackle this good since Joe Staley. Morgan Moses on the other end is an excellent athlete, real big guy. I mean, he does have some bending problems, but he's just a strong, big man with this awesome beard. So Morgan Moses is a good bookend, and he seems to improve every year. Now, you also mentioned Brandon Sheriff, the guy that got drafted a few years ago, and everyone did the, who? Well, it's worked out so far. He's been an excellent guard in the league. Now, Sean Laval is a former Cleveland Brown. He's going to start at left guard, maybe. He's never really played that well. I mean, he had a couple good years in Cleveland, but I mean, that was long ago. Play has kind of declined, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was battled in camp for his left guard position. Now, center Chase Roullet, he played last year, didn't exactly have an excellent year, so they're a little bit weaker at the left guard center position. They should have a camp battle, and there are other players that could play. I mean, it wouldn't be unconceivable to me if Tyan Secchi slipped inside and played guard. I mean, if that was a possibility. I think this is a weakness from left guard and center, but at right guard, right tackle, left tackle, this is a pretty good unit.
Let's move over to the defense. That defensive line has Jonathan Allen, the first-round pick from 2017, Daron Payne, the first-round pick from this year, as well as Matt Ioannidis, Ziggy Hood, the fifth-round pick, and Tim Settle, and veteran Phil Taylor, as well as Stacey McGee.
Well, Matt Ioannidis, it's Matt Ioannidis, and for all you Greeks out there, Ziggy Hood, Phil Taylor, Stacey McGee, those are some like old school throwback veterans. I mean, I'm not sure they're all going to make the team, and Phil Taylor's been out of football for quite some time. Phil Taylor, a former first-round pick for the Cleveland Browns. Oh, it's odd that these Browns seem to make it on other teams so easily. Stacey McGee played for the Raiders, and Ziggy Hood had a long career for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, those are the veterans that shouldn't play too many snaps, but are able to contribute when necessary. Now, let's get down to brass tacks. You did say Daron Payne, a first-round pick for Alabama this year, and then last year's first-round pick, Jonathan Allen, as well as Matt Ioannidis. Now, you add those three together, that's a pretty good defensive line. That's not bad at all. And you got two first-rounders. I mean, I'm assuming Daron Payne's going to work out. Like I said, he's an Alabama product, so the probabilities are high. So I like this defensive line. You pair young athleticism with old, savvy veteran, and I think you got a good combination. I didn't mention Jonathan Allen, also an Alabama product. So, like I said, You pair the old with the young, and you're probably going to have the right combo.
And at linebacker on the outside, they're highlighted by Ryan Kerrigan, as well as Preston Smith and Pernell McPhee. And on the inside, they have Mason Foster, Zach Brown, as well as Zach Vigil and Martrell Spate.
Now, Ryan Kerrigan, I feel, is a bit of an underrated player. I don't even know if he's made the Pro Bowl yet. I think maybe once. And if you're a Pro Bowl alternate, are you really a Pro Bowler? Ryan Kerrigan, I feel like he's one of the better players on this defense, if not the best. He does produce. He is a decent player. And then if you pair Ryan Kerrigan with Preston Smith or Pernell McPhee, perhaps, you're going to have a pretty good pass rush, I would imagine, especially the defensive line being perceivably dominant. Maybe not dominant, but above average. Mason Foster, Zach Brown, that should shore up your interior linebackers. It's nothing great, but there is veteran presence there. Both are capable of racking up the tackles. I mean, it feels like there isn't that much depth here, but your starting front seven should be not necessarily a strength, but certainly not a weakness for this Redskins. It should be pretty decent. And let's also add in the Alex Smith effect, where they're going to be fresh most of the game, and you might see some more productive numbers for people. I'd say especially Ryan Kerrigan. He might be a guy to watch out for as far as the statistics box go.
And at corner, they're highlighted by the big free agent splash from a few years ago in Josh Norman, as well guys that have had positive careers so far in Quinton Dunbar, Orlando Scandrick, the veteran, and as well as the 6th-round supplemental pick in Adonis Alexander.
And 3rd-round pick from last year, Fabian Moreau. I think this is an okay group. Josh Norman, the thing I didn't like about him is, what are they paying him, $20 million a year? That just seems a ridiculous amount for a cornerback. It just seems like a waste of money when you could get a bunch of other people for much less. The sum of its parts is greater than its whole a lot of the time. So I'm not sure splashing on Josh Norman was the greatest idea. And that's nothing against him as a corner. I think he's pretty good, but is he really in that top flight tier? I'm not sure. And they haven't really won a lot of games since acquiring Josh Norman. So yeah, I'm going to badger this signing from a few years ago a little bit, because it rarely bears the fruits of how much labor has been put in. So yeah, Josh Norman headlines this crew as an elite corner for the Washington Redskins. He's got a ragtag bunch behind him. I mean, these guys have had decent careers, but I'm not sure this is an excellent group either, but it certainly isn't a weakness.
And at safety, they have DJ Swearinger, who's had a good career so far in 5 years in the league. As well, they have the 4th-round pick from last year, and Monte Nicholson, who played limited snaps but played well. It'll be interesting to see if he plays more, if he can have success. They also have guys like Deshazer Everett, who played snaps last year, and the 4th-round pick in Troy Apke.
Yeah, we mentioned Troy Apke earlier. Deshazer Everett, like you said, played some snaps. DJ Swearinger, yeah, you mentioned, did play well last year, which is surprising because he's kind of bounced around a little bit. I believe from Houston, then to Arizona, and then to Washington. Yeah, this is another thing where it's not good but great. But the thing I'm the most excited for is, we've mentioned many times already in this pseudo podcast, is the Alex Smith effect. These guys might not have been able to hit their potential considering the type of style that the Redskins have been able to play. If you add Alex Smith, can it make this defense a threat? I think it can. I think it's good enough that if they are fresh, that they are going to be able to wreak havoc on opposing offenses this coming year.
So roster strength, I'm just going to jump in and say this. It is Alex Smith at quarterback.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And also, I'm going to give a shout out to Trent Williams, but that's just one position on the offensive line. I'm going to say Alex Smith is the strength of this whole team.
And the biggest weakness going into 2018?
We got to go with it, running back. I don't want to say running back, but yeah, I do. I mean, you lose Darius Geis. I mean, they were kind of pinning a lot of hopes. There's a lot of pre-draft and preseason hype around him. I'm not saying he was going to be the real deal, but with Chris Thompson's lingering health issues, it kind of looks a little bit thin. They might want to look to bring in a veteran here.
So going into 2018, we have the Redskins team grade at a C+. That means 8.36 wins, and the over-under is 6.5. Fat guy, this is a nice bet to make.
It's a nice over. It's nice to end on positives with Tennessee and Washington, because we are big pessimists. And you say, 8 wins isn't that much. You have to remove this fan myopic view. You have to take the hard numbers. You have to take the conservative approach. And we think conservatively the Washington Redskins will win 8.3 games, and that's far and above the 6.5 that Vegas is giving them. So I think this is a bet. Let's take a big over on the Washington Redskins and wish them well.
And if you like this video, this is the last of our series. We've done one of these for every single team. There's so much content that we've put out this month, previewing this year, looking at wins, looking at who's going to do well, who's going to do poorly, over-under bets. Check out those other videos. It's going to help us out. And we've put out a lot of content for you guys, and hopefully it can help you out going into the season. Hit that like button if you agree with Big Ryan the Fat Guy. Give us a comment below with how many games you think the Redskins will win next season. And subscribe for more NFL betting projections. Come over here and give me a